Join Drs. Savanah Craig and Ronnetta Sartor as we navigate life beyond graduation. Real conversations about forging our own paths in our early years, in our careers. There's a reason it's called practicing dentistry. All right, welcome back to Beyond Graduation. This week we are talking about a big topic, continuing education. All right, Ronnetta, what's your thoughts on CE?
Oh man, it's a huge topic. I think there's different levels to CE. I'm kind of a CE junkie, so even as a dental student, anything where I could learn more so that I could be better for my patients and for myself, just to like have a better understanding of anything, I would take those courses. I think through the years, the types of continuing education that I've taken has changed and evolved.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, like say in residency, you didn't have a whole lot of money. So whatever residency paid for in terms of continuing education is what I did.
Yeah.
And then as I became an associate, I had a certain allocation that they would give me each year for continuing education. And I did what I could to maximize what they gave me in terms of costs. And then if there was something that I really, really wanted to learn, then I would pay for it within reason.
For sure.
In residency, I remember program directors pretty much saying that, as you practice, you'll get to see more of your work and more of what worked and didn't work. And so, as I got into the latter years of my associateship, I started to see cases come back and what maybe failed, or maybe I didn't like how it looked or something like that. Or I started to think, okay, well, how could I make that better? And, so now pretty much I'm kind of at a place where I am investing in like more CE to kind of change the way that I look at dentistry and practice. Before it would be more so like, okay, this weekend I'm going to go learn about crown lengthening or something like that.
More like one-off.
Right. But
topics.
Now I'm looking more at, mini-residencies and that sort of thing. And it's teaching me to be a complete care dentist and look at everything, which we learn that in school, looking at the health and how that impacts the teeth. But I think that's one thing because we have that in our minds, but also relating that to the patient and learning more about occlusion and centric relation and all those things that are, weird words that we learned in school. But I've been very happy and very excited with the new path that I'm on in terms of continuing education, because it's so much to learn. And I feel like it's so much to learn that we could be in dental school for 10 years and still not know everything.
Yeah, that's the problem of the whole thing, is you got to have a baseline to get out of there, but there's still so much to learn. And like you said, I've not been practicing for very long, but even still, it's like, oh, this is what they were trying to tell me in dental school, but I didn't understand until I've done some things. You're like, oh, shoot, that does matter.
For sure. What would you say your take on continuing education has been as like a newer dentist in the game?
Yeah, I think I got really overwhelmed of like, I want to learn this and more about this and all of that stuff. And so I don't know if I've like jumped in too quickly and too deep into a bunch of different things. But I think that's part of being like newer. And so I've just tried to take advantage of like whatever's been put in front of me. So like my boss had some vouchers to go to like Dentsply. And so I was like, that's free, I'll go. And then like I've had the opportunity to take some more like surgical and implant courses because those are things I really enjoy. And so, yeah, I think right now I'm on that like little topics here and there sort of CE in the things that interest me most, or the things that like challenge me. Like I should probably take some more endo CE because I despise it. But yeah, so I think it's so interesting because you literally could spend every single weekend of your life taking more CE, and it can be really, really overwhelming.
That's a very good point. Very good point. I think the part that becomes most overwhelming sometimes is, okay, I've learned all this great material, but how do I implement it?
Yes.
How do
Yes.
I go back to my office? And if I'm an associate, how do I, sell the owner doctor on this cool thing that I learned? And I think it would make the office profitable. And
Mm-hmm.
even as an owner, how do I go back and incorporate this with my team? How do I
Yes.
train them on what I just learned to make
Yes.
sure that we could implement it in a very seamless fashion?
Yeah, and get them like excited about it can
Yeah,
be
I think
tricky.
one of the things that you and I both did, while in residency is we took full advantage of local continuing
Mm-hmm.
education. So local study clubs, or
Yep.
if you're a member of like whatever your state dental association is, a lot of times they'll have free continuing education that you get with your membership. I know that the ADA and AGD and sometimes Pankey and Dawson, they'll also Spear and all of the big names, they'll
Yeah.
have free continuing education as well. So I took full advantage of all of those things, like as a new dentist, especially as I was saving and trying to figure life out as a new dentist. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's just I don't know. I think it's all about mentality too, where I'm like, never hurts to have a refresher on this thing or whatever. And so that's been nice. Like the Ignite University stuff is nice because they're short little videos on like specific topics where I'll be like, oh, let me go back and review like again, it's always endo, but like let me review their endo video where it's, part of the fee for all of Ignite U, and I can just look at these little topics and refresh myself because there's always things you forget.
Yeah. What I love about IgniteDDS is that we also have two types of continuing education.
Yes.
So we have the Ignite University, which is really cool because it has anything from, like you said, from photography and marketing to, endodontist talking about how to do endo, and someone that places implants all the time,
And it's
giving
like a
feedback.
little Netflix catalog of
Right.
just videos.
And lots and tons of them. And you could get continuing education hours for
Yes.
doing it in the privacy of your own home, or
Yes.
if you're traveling and you want to listen to some continuing education, you can earn hours from that. And then from a business standpoint, and if you're an associate maybe thinking about ownership, we have the business masterminds with IgniteDDS, and that's been awesome.
Yes.
um, on the brink of deciding whether you want to be an associate, not an associate, if you want to no longer be an associate, or, or maybe you're trying to figure out if associate life is what is going to be what you do as your career. The first part of the mastermind helps figure those questions out. And the next part of it serves as a playbook for new dentists, new owners to help thrive in their dental practice.
Yeah. I think that's the cool and overwhelming part about being a dentist is the different categories of CE that we can take. You can take the business CE, you can take the clinical CE, you can take the professional development CE,
Mm-hmm.
and all of those things. So you've been doing big CE with Dawson. How did you decide that it was time to do a bigger continuum? And how did you decide which philosophy you wanted to get into?
That's a very, very great question. So, um, well, I went to MUSC, so it's kind of in the southern part of the lower part of the U.S. and
Yeah.
I had lots of teachers in dental school that always talked about Dawson Academy. And then when COVID happened, IgniteDDS had their fast track program, and then the fast track program turned into a study club. And one of my mentors, and I think she's a mentor to you as well, but Dr. Shannon Johnson, she went to UF and she learned from Dawson himself. And she would teach our study club, and a lot of what she would teach was based on those principles, and it just really resonated with me. So when I became a practice owner, I said, okay, well, I had the perfect opportunity to start anew, and I have a new team, and I can train them on new protocols and philosophies that will ultimately benefit our patient.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been pretty great. I have not graduated from the mini-residency program yet, but I'm learning so much every week, every day, and I'm learning more and more and seeing more and more to be able to diagnose. It's overwhelming. Like you said, like once you start to like see things differently, your
Yeah.
treatment plans become different. And it's an exciting time because, like you said, it's the practice of dentistry. So the way that I'm practicing has changed. And each year, as I learn more and more, it's
Mm-hmm.
changing, which is ultimately what we want to do so that we can provide the best dentistry for our patients.
Yeah. Do you think do you wish you would have done it sooner, or do you think, you had to practice for a while and like get your feet wet before you jumped into such a big.
I really wish I could have done it sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I think um, just my mindset and how I look at things would be a lot further along. But part of it too is like I was in an associateship,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's easier if you're in an associateship where um, the owner doctor or your company sees value in continuing education that can be pretty expensive. And so
Yeah.
I knew that I would be on my own fronting that bill. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
part of it is just kind of knowing from a financial standpoint when you can, because a lot of the curriculums can be pretty pricey. So it's
We
just
got
timing sometimes.
bills to pay.
Right. Especially with student loan debt being as high as it is. I know it's really hard for a lot of dentists out there. Um, but we're in such a great profession that attending these continuing education things can help us scale our
Yeah.
practices in such a way that it helps us to attack that debt
Yeah.
a lot quicker than we would be able to if we were just doing fillings all day.
Yeah.
Which is
And
nothing wrong with doing fillings all day, but if you know more, you're tasked with doing more and informing your patients of what you see.
an investment in, yourself and your skills and all of those good things. Um, do you think so as a solo owner, you're able to bring in whatever philosophy you want? Do you think if you had the financial resources to do it as an associate, it would have been difficult if you sort of bought into this really comprehensive philosophy and maybe the other people in your practice weren't also trained at the same, you know what I mean? Can a Dawson and a Pankey dentist practice in the same office, or Coyce or Spear or whatever?
I think that's a great question. I think at the heart of everything, a lot of the principles are very similar and is achieving the same goal of patients experiencing whole and complete health.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think some of the principles just inherently, I had as an associate.
Yeah.
I think it brings up another point too, is that, just because you're an associate, it's still your license on the line.
Yes.
It's still your morals and your values that you bring into the office every day. So I, I think, and it's people that's in the mini residency with me that are in associateships, and, maybe they're doctors that they're in group practice with don't buy in, but it's easier to implement in the practice if, someone there, has taken a training and knows and
Mm-hmm.
all of those sorts of things. But I think it's a very loaded question, and I think
Yeah.
that it's very specific to the specific situation that you're in. But
Yeah.
I believe wholeheartedly in like being yourself and staying true to your values. And if it's a way that you want to practice and you think it's going to be to the best benefit of your patient as an associate, I know there's some constraints on there. It may be some constraints, but do the best that you can to practice in that way, because if it's going to make the case easier and simpler to do, then there's no harm in that. Everyone wants that, and if your patient is happy at the end, that's all we
Right.
want, right?
Yeah, you did your job.
Yeah.
That's so
But yeah, that's
interesting.
a very great question, because it hits on so many different points.
Yeah.
What's your take on that, like, as someone that might potentially be an associate and take this sort of CE in the future?
Yeah. I think it's cool because there's so many ways to practice dentistry. And I think coming from residency, where for the most part we were all practicing the same or learning from the same faculty. So you were taught to do an extraction with this elevator, and it was there because that was what you were taught to use. And so I think going into my associateship, there are times where I'm like, hey, where's this thing? And they're like, we don't have that. And I'm like, ah, shoot. Like, just like, I don't know, silly things that I just didn't think about because they were always there in residency because I was taught to use the things that were there.
Right.
And so I think it was nice to work in like the same philosophy, and it was the same philosophy because I was being taught by these people to buy into that
Mm-hmm.
philosophy. So it creates it's not a challenge, but it gives room for more interesting conversations when you have to um, meld these different philosophies. And not that I think my way of practicing is better, and I'm very like open minded. And that's why I like that I'm in group practice right now, is to be like, oh, this is what I was taught to do, but what are you doing? And but I could see it's all a personality thing too. I can see some people not being a huge fan that you're practicing in a way that's different from them in an associateship or in a group practice or a partnership. Um, so I think it can be a way of like learning and growing together. But I think it could also cause some tension depending on
Mm-hmm.
how opposed you are to the other person's way of practicing.
And there are different doctors that, may go and take continuing education at a lot of the different big name
Yeah.
education. Because, like you said, it's something that you can learn from each of them, and you take what you want from it and mold
Yeah.
it and bring it to your practice and do whatever you need to do to support your patient base as best as you can.
That's a really good point. Yeah. It's not like you're creating clones, like you're just taking this piece and putting it into how you practice.
Yeah, and in group practices, that's the beauty of it. Like
Yeah.
Dr. A, Dr. B, Dr. C, Dr. D, you guys do things differently, and you know As long as the key goal is to keep the patient's best interests at heart, a lot of the other stuff can be worked out.
For sure, for sure. And I think it's just like the residency mentality too, of we had so many different people with different educational backgrounds. And that's the cool part of dentistry, is there's always something to learn. And it's also the overwhelming part of dentistry.
It is. It very much is. And so, guys, that's going to be it for today's episode. But if you guys are looking for convenient continuing education, you can check out IgniteDDS's Ignite University, as well as the business masterminds or just regular masterminds with IgniteDDS. If you want to connect with Savannah and I, you can catch us on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Dr_Sartor, and Savannah's
At Savanah Craig DDS.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Beyond Graduation. If you enjoyed this week's episode, be sure to share it with a friend. Connect with us on social media at Savanah Craig DDS and at Dr_Sartor. And remember, you are not alone on this journey.
This episode was sponsored by the Dental Residency Guide and the Beyond Graduation ebooks. These ebooks can be found at IgniteDDS.com/ebooks.
Thank you so much for listening to Beyond Graduation, brought to you by IgniteDDS and Future Dentists.